Dr. Jensen, thank you for your time. With unemployment rising and concern about the economic crisis, a lot of people would no doubt be feeling fairly nervous this Easter time. What would be your message to them?
Yes, they are feeling nervous, and with good reason too. In many cases, families are being devastated by people being out of work and so forth. And what we really need at this time is to have hope, to have a future, to feel that there is a future. And ultimately that hope has got to rest on God and what God's done for us through Jesus.
Well, the government would say that you can put your trust in us, that we'll deal with this economic situation, and we are doing the right thing. But are you saying that there needs to be, that the government alone can't deal with something like this?
Absolutely, yes. The government is one thing, the nation is another thing. And the nation's more important than any government, and we'd be foolish to put our trust in what government can provide, although government's very important. Now, what I'm talking about here are the deeper issues of the morale and spiritual health of the nation. And these are very testing times. They're going to test our health spiritually, and we're going to need to trust in God all the more at a time like this.
Looking at the cause of what's happened with the economy, a lot of focus on corporate greed being to blame. Do you think this is a failure of society in general, too much greed when it comes to material possessions?
Look, we've all got evil in our heart. It's very easy to blame others for what's gone wrong. And when we analyse all this in years to come, we may say greed was at the bottom of it. But what I'm really concerned about at the moment is how we handle the problems that have come to us. And what we're being called to is what you may call faith in God, hope for the future, and love for one another. Now, it's not so much the past then I'm interested in as the future. How are we going to cope being a community of care at a time like this? And that's not something the government can give us. This is something that we as a people going to have to deal with. How can we help others survive at a time like this?
Well, when you say that, how do we help others? Do you think people are thinking beyond their own situation, their own job, their own family, and thinking about how this global economic crisis is really going to affect people who could stand to lose a great deal more?
No, I think the last 15 years has not prepared us for this. We've become extraordinarily individualistic. We've begun to live by ourselves and live for ourselves. Now that's a spiritual problem, a very profound one. And so we're not well equipped to deal with this crisis that's come upon us. And it's going to be a great challenge. It's like going into a war or something like this, where the nation is going to be challenged. Who are we? What are we prepared to stand for? And now I don't think we have even begun really to take this on board yet. The next year will be the test. We'll have to see. It goes wider than that too, of course, because of our responsibility not just for our nation, but for other nations as well. Are Australians going to be generous?
What's the answer to that? Do you think Australians are going to be generous? When it comes to, I guess, some of our impoverished neighbours, Papua New Guinea and others, do you think Australians are going to reach out and help others?
Well, Australians have a good track record for doing that. The bushfires demonstrated that. However, we haven't even begun to think yet about the impact of this global financial crisis on Papua New Guinea, on Tanzania and other nations. It's going to be devastating there. That discourse hasn't come up to the surface yet in Australian national life, and it'll be a test to us to see if it can and will, and if we are prepared not just to be generous to ourselves and amongst ourselves, but generous to the poor of the earth. That's a real test for Australian national statehood, really. We've got soldiers at the moment in Afghanistan and Iraq and other places. Here is another test as to whether we will do the right thing for others. The evidence so far is that Australians are capable of this, but we haven't started it yet. And it will require a profound spiritual shift for us to be generous in a sustained way.
Where does Christianity fall into that? I note there was a recent survey showing that most Australians, 55%, did not believe that Jesus rose from the dead. So I guess it's suggesting that a bulk of Australians don't agree with the central tenet of Christianity. Are you surprised by that sort of finding? And can that spiritual health that you're talking about be achieved without Christianity?
Yeah, I'm not surprised, though I think what you've said is not exactly accurate. I think it was 55% of what you may call non-active non-believers. That doesn't count in all the believers as well. So if I could mention that.
Sure.
I think the majority of Australians still actually believe that Jesus rose from the dead, and I think that's a wonderful and astonishing thing. What we need to do now is act on it. Many of us have sort of got a vague belief in it, but the resurrection of Jesus from the dead is a real historical event, and it shows us that God is never beaten, that God is not even beaten by death, and that there is always a new hope, new horizon. So yes, I believe that Christianity, which was the sort of the fundamental faith of this nation, is the place to which we need to go if we're going to renew the energies, the spiritual energies of this nation. And they are in trouble.